Welcome back to the Beef Ever Cool podcast. My name is Rex 45. I'm excited tonight to have this guest on. I've been following him for a while, racing and stuff like that. And it's always cool to see. I can't say always because I haven't been racing forever. So that's not fair to say. But since I've been racing, it's always cool to see new riders come in and then see them progress and grow and stuff like that. And when I was racing, first started racing, I didn't even think about anything like that. I was just more scared as ever and trying to figure out why I'm even here in the first place. But this next guy, I'm excited to have on. I've been watching him for a little bit, seeing what he's been doing. He's got into racing, got into the community, got into giving back to the community. So it's very exciting to see. I feel the same way like how I got into racing, and this podcast is giving back to the community, and that's how I look at it. And when we started, and still. So I'm very excited to have him on and stuff like that. And he's a fan of the show, so even cooler. With that said, as how I start all the shows, I want to thank all the subscribers, all the listeners, all the people commenting. Even I got to start saying now, even the riders and the racers, because we have those racers and riders commenting as well and liking what we're doing and stuff like that, and not just from the U.S., but we can say we're global all around the world. So that's exciting to see. And it wasn't like that in the beginning when we started, and it's really cool to see. So like always, go to beefevercool.com. Check out what we do, check out how to be a part of the community and how to give back. And also just listen to the show and enjoy what we're doing, talking about motorcycle racing and having folks like this on that have stories that you may not hear at other places. Because, riding is such a thing that, like, if you look at it from, the top level, you don't think about regular people riding, but there are more regular people riding, and regular in the sense of like, we're not in MotoGP, we're not in World Superbike, we're not in Motor America. We're club racing, regardless of where we are in the world. We're track day riding wherever we are in the world. And there's more of us than they are at the top level. So that's always cool to see. So that's kind of what the show does. So I'm excited to do that. I want to mention Woodcraft Technologies, because they're affiliate of the show. Mention Rexy, get a free T-shirt if you spend over $100. Woodcraft give you, they're in the business. They're in the business of racing, clip-ons, rear set, exhaust, race plastics, tire warmers, stands. I mean, they pretty much give you everything but the bike and the ability to ride the bike. And so that's pretty cool to have. And, if you're a fan of Pirelli, if you're not a fan of Pirelli, check out Mach 10 Motorsport. Mention Be Forever Cool and get 10% off some race slicks. If you're on them big bikes, the 600 or 1,000, 10% go a long way over a race weekend, over a race season. So, we give you that. We got more affiliate programs coming in the future, so I can't wait to officially mention those programs. But we got some other programs coming to give you guys some ability to save some money and still go racing, because that's the biggest complaint about the racing community, the cost. That's the biggest complaint. No matter whatever level you are in the world, it's the biggest complaint. It's the cost. And we're trying to alleviate that. So I can go on and on about that, but I'm going to stop that. I want to bring in Shawn Hughes, motorcycle clinic, club racer, motorcycle rider. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Same. I earlier this morning when I woke up, I was kicking rocks and somebody mentioned like, have a good day kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what? I should have a good day regardless. So my day's a lot better. Nice. What's good, man? How are you?
I'm great. The weather isn't awesome right now, but it's been a nice day, and it's heading towards the weekend. And I think the only thing that makes it a little bit of a downer is it's been so long since the last round with Niemer, and we still have a couple weeks before the next round. So that withdrawal is kicking in something fierce.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that because I do know about that. And we're going to talk about that. But like always, when I have guests on and talk about motorcycle riding and stuff like that, what's your first memory of wanting a bike, being on a bike, and all that fun stuff. Like, when did you get into riding? Because for me, it was later in life. I wanted to ride at a very young age, but my parents, my Jamaican parents, so my mom was just like, I'll kill myself. And she's probably right. And so I didn't get a bike at 15. I got a bike in my 40s. So what was it like for you?
Well, I know a lot of people have stories about when they were really young. I didn't have that. I was able to get on a dirt bike once or twice with a family friend when I was in like elementary school. I wanted a bike through high school. There were a couple of kids that I thought were really cool that had them. And back then they had just come out with the Ninja 250. And I was a much smaller person back then. And so I had it in my head that I wanted a Ninja 250, and wasn't really that. I guess I thought a lot about the motorcycle. I just didn't know much about it. And that was being heavily advertised at the time. I didn't get my first bike until I joined the Marine Corps. And when I was stationed out in California, it was just kind of a popular thing to have a bike. So I had a,
so sorry to cut you off. Like, what age and around what time? If
this was 18, and it was 1990, and I got a Honda Hurricane, a Hurricane 600. So the predecessor to the CBR. And it was something that I didn't do well on, and it didn't last very long. I didn't pay that bike the respect it deserves, and I was a young kid, first time on a bike. And it just didn't go well. And so
elaborate a little bit on that. We mean we don't go
out in California. One of the difficulties was at that time helmets weren't required. And looking back on it, I was kind of silly for not wearing a helmet, at least in my view, given physically clumsy such as I am. You know, the time that something was going to happen was just a clock that was ticking. You know, it was I was going to do something silly, and you know, like anybody, I jump on a bike thinking that I can do anything because I've seen it in a movie or seen it on TV, so obviously I can do it. And I ended up wrecking the bike in a parking lot. Had been out all day riding and laid it down in the parking lot and just did enough damage to it that it wasn't worth repairing.
Oh, wow. You really sent it.
Yeah. So to be fair, the bike wasn't in great condition when I got it. I mean, that's how I was able to afford it. But then I received, I got a motorcycle again, and this was a 93 GSXR 600. And that kind of started my love with Suzuki's. And back in that year, the bike was essentially a 600 motor and a 750 frame. So it wasn't fast, and it wasn't terribly nimble, but it looked cool. It was blue with black accents, and the R for GSXR was bright orange. It looked awesome. And I really had a good time with that bike. And I guess I was at that time, maybe 22 or 23, and ended up getting a ZX11. I jumped from a GSXR 600 to a ZX11. Wow. And that was in 97. And I remember that because I had bought, I was choosing between a GSXR 1100 and a ZX11 because I just had it in my mind I needed something that big. And I remember I went with the ZX11 because I had seen pictures of the ZX7R, and that bike just looked tight, right? The green and the blue and the white, and it had the vent tubes from the tank, and it just looked really cool. And so I wanted to go to Kawasaki instead of staying with Suzuki. And mechanically speaking, that was the single worst bike I've ever worked on. Wow. To the point where I got so frustrated with the bike that I think I ended up trading that in as a package deal on a minivan when I lived in Virginia. I was just that frustrated with the bike. Everything that could go wrong with the bike did, and it just, you know, I probably didn't do it any favors by storing it for extended periods of time, but it just mechanically had problems with it right away. Right. So I went several years without a bike at all, and I going to different duty stations in the Marine Corps. I didn't feel like I was missing it. I was deploying and things like that. Right. And then I deployed overseas at Sugi, Japan. I was on an air base there. And there was a guy that was selling a Hayabusa. And it was a 2001 Hayabusa that somebody had brought over to Japan. Okay. And it was bigger than most of the things on the road, and it scared me. Right. So I was like, well, I want that. And it was the 2001 it was the blue silver version, but the graphic on it looked like a falcon head. It wasn't like just the circle, I guess.
Right.
So anyway, I ended up buying that and bringing it back to the States, and I still have that bike. But I absolutely loved it, and it reaffirmed my love of Suzuki, I guess. But I had a fantastic time with it, and ever since I came back to the States, I had been kind of working more towards the track.
Gotcha. Oh, wow. And so that was 2001, you said?
It was actually 2003 when I bought it. The bike was a 2001, and I came back to the States in 2003. I brought it back with me from Japan, and I rode it in Florida for several years.
Wow.
In fact, I was part of a Hayabusa group. It was an internet-based group, and we would meet up at the Tail of the Dragon at least once a year. And we would show up there, and there would be 80 Hayabusas up there riding around on the Dragon.
Oh, wow.
And it was a fantastic time. And it was the first time that I was around people that I thought cared about motorcycles and respected them.
When you say care about motorcycles, then I want to backpedal, because one, it's pretty cool to have a bike in Japan and ride around, because I'm a fan of Japan and I can't wait to go. So let's talk about that a little bit more before we move on. What was it like riding a bike in Japan and outside of the the Marine base?
I have some very cool pictures at the base of Mount Fuji. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting is the place where I worked, and this was a naval air facility, so it was combined with the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. Mm-hmm. But the people that I worked with were all Japanese, and they all had motorcycles of different kinds. And so we would get together and we would go out riding in groups of 30, 40 people in Japan. Wow. And if you've ever seen movies like it's funny, I was making my wife watch Tokyo Drift the other night. Mm-hmm. And, when they're going around Shibuya and they're going through some of the different highways in Japan, like I was telling her, I was like, I've ridden on those roads and I've, been in those places. And just like I said originally, when I was over there on the bike, it was bigger than a lot of the cars on the road. Wow. And so it's funny, you didn't have some of the problems that you have here where people can't see you in traffic because you're the same size as they are with some of the small cars and things that they have. And it was lots of very moderate weather. The roads were always in fantastic condition. Like I don't remember ever being concerned about potholes or trash in the streets or anything, that was going to kind of jump up off the road and hit me. Right. It was just going out there and riding in a very pleasant environment and a very, very thoughtful population, right? Like I said, polite to people, courteous drivers, the whole thing. I mean, it was an absolute blast to be riding out there, just enjoying the world as it was over there in Japan. If you haven't been and you're excited about going, you should be, and you should go as soon as you can and often after that. Okay. So you brought you in, like, I mean, I know you think of, when you talk about Tokyo Drift, think of Fast and Furious, and you think about the amount of cars that's come over to the U.S. because of that movie. What made you decide to bring the Gixxer over? Well, so the thing was I loved the bike. I was really fortunate to have come across the deal. Yeah. And so when I came back, it was just kind of a logical thing. I want to bring it back with me. It's something I want to ride back in the States. And so it was a fantastic thing. I had just come back from Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 and had a little extra money in my pocket from deploying. And that's what I used to buy the bike. And I just honestly fell in love with it, right? Like it was an amazing bike. It could do everything. And it did everything well. And what's funny over in Japan, like when you think of Tokyo Drift and you see all the modifications they do to the cars and you see the different bike clubs and stuff, that like I found myself not really into the deep into that culture, but I was on the periphery of it with a lot of people that I worked with.
Right.
And what's funny is the number one bike shop that you would go to buy things for a bike, and it was anything you could imagine, was called Yellow Box for whatever reason. And so you would go, and if you can just imagine like a department store that is huge, that is just different sections of whether it's parts or accessories or gear or luggage or what, I mean, just all the different things. And it's almost like every Yellow Box you went to was a mall, but they had these specialized things that you don't really see here. And some of it was really cool, and some of it was kind of silly. But you know, there's a lot of famous modifications they do where they have the super tall exhaust tailpipes that go back, and
modified
culture. All that stuff was there, and it was just really interesting to see. It wasn't my thing, but it was cool that it was there and people got so into it.
Yeah.
And that's where I go back to seeing people that were that excited about being motorcycles. And especially for me, because in the military, the motorcycles have such a bad rap because it's so easy to get hurt on them.
Right.
It's even easier when you are out on the street and wanting to do stunts or wanting to speed as fast as you can, which a lot of people in the military, they have like this attitude that they're invulnerable, and on the same time, they're trying to burn out frustration or aggression.
Right.
And so it was nice to be in a place where it was so accepting of motorcycles, because that just had not been in my experience. And the interesting part about that is when I brought the bike back to the States, and I was riding in Florida, and when I checked into my command in Florida, the first thing they said is, we have a problem with motorcycles, and we're trying to discourage people from riding motorcycles because we're trying to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. And it didn't help that I was at a kind of an entry-level training base, not for boot camp but for technical skills. And I was like, well, this is going to be kind of a problem because I'll be on my motorcycle as much as I possibly can. It'll be a very visible thing.
Right.
And that actually came into play. I mean, there were a number of people that I was able to connect with, even from a military leadership perspective, just because I was a person that was involved in motorcycles, that was passionate about them.
Right.
And so were they. And so I was able, to connect with people that I probably wouldn't normally have connected with, either because of their background or because of, what they were doing and where they were in life. But we had this common motorcycle theme. And so the military piece kind of went to the background for a little while we were on the bikes. And
I was saying that's one of the biggest things, like for me. And again, I started a lot later in life than you did, well up 22 years later. I mean, I was on a bike at young, but we can't count it because I wasn't riding. And I think that's one of the, like that was a shock to me, the quality of the community.
Yes.
That was it's a huge part, and it really does. I don't know if it's highlighted enough, but it's like, I always say this, like if everyone rode motorcycles, the world would be a better place.
Oh, 100%. That, and I really like that. I'm going to steal that quality of community, because that is so incredibly true. And what's funny is, it's when you meet people that are not awesome in the motorcycle community, they have a way of filtering themselves out.
Yeah.
Right. You don't last very long in a group without knowing that you're kind of screwing up and that you need to do something different. And if people don't adjust their attitudes, they kind of find themselves away. It's really funny how, in some ways, kind of self-policing the community is, right?
Yeah.
If you're a person that doesn't care about anybody and you're not going to do right by people, it gets announced, right? Like everybody can see it, and people tend to steer clear of it.
Yeah, it's like a badge of honor. Like if you're in the community, you're helping out a fellow rider, regardless of how you feel about them personally. It's like if you're on a bike and you can help them, you help them.
That's right, and it's 100% what you said. If everybody rode a motorcycle, the world would be a better place. It really would be.
So let's talk. So you're overseas riding. You come back to the States riding. Obviously, I haven't ridden overseas on a bike. I've driven in cars, but like, that has to be a shock to the system as well, because it's not the same rules. It's a different vibe, all around. So like, what was that like for you coming back? And did you shy away from the community in the US? Did you think like the US community needs to be better? You think the US community was better? Like, what was your view coming back? And when you came back to Florida, but I'm in Florida now, and I like the community, so I think it's a good community. But what was the vibe like for you coming back?
So I was in the Panhandle, and to your point, coming back to the States, some of the big differences were the size of the cars, right? Because everything over here is bigger. But you also had a much broader range of distractions. And one thing, when I was over in Japan and I come back in 2003, you didn't see people in Japan on their cell phones driving.
Yeah.
When I got back to the States, you see it everywhere. And, immediately, because the Bluetooth speaker thing wasn't really a thing back then. It's people sitting there with phones up to their ears and stuff and they were big phones.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where distracted driving was something I had to get used to. The culture wasn't quite the same because you didn't have as many people where I was, which was a ways outside of Pensacola, Florida. You didn't have the same culture there unless you went to the beach and linked up with it. There were a lot of people that rode around the beach and things like that.
Yeah.
But where I was, there just weren't a lot of motorcycles. And because there were so many people in the military, like I said, that culture was really kind of trying to discourage that. And in particular, that it was where they did flight training. And so you had a lot of student pilots that didn't want to do any kind of activities that might jeopardize them completing flight training and getting their wings. So, even though you had skydiving that was popular in the area, and even though you had, snow speedboating and jet skis and stuff like that, you had a lot of people that would stay away from any of those things because they didn't want to get hurt and have that hamper their training.
Right.
I had a CO pull me off to the side and ask me what kind of an example I thought I was setting for junior Marines riding a motorcycle. And I said, I wear my gear. I do safety training. I ride, responsibly. I keep my motorcycle in sound condition, and I have insurance. Like, I think I present a pretty good example.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But it was just the fact that, that I was riding a motorcycle, and people looked at that negatively because they looked at that as me encouraging other people to do so. And
sorry, not sorry, because I have to cut you off because it is a show. But in Japan, was it the same thing, the same vibe that looked at like how other people looked at motorcycling?
No, not at all. Not at all. Oh, like I said, over there, but I think I wasn't in a training base. I wasn't at a place where it was brand new people. So there was a different kind of maturity and a different kind of seniority. And I think that a lot of people, in fact, if I remember, it was a Navy base and there were only 9 Marines on the base, and every one of us had a motorcycle.
Wow.
A lot of the Japanese people that were working on the base all had motorcycles. It was a very different thing. And I saw that culture change back here in the States.
I was going to ask about that, like the culture, because we talk about MotoGP, Moto America, World Superbike, and we think about these young riders and us, old rider. I consider myself old rider. I don't want to do that, but like the culture in the U.S. was anti-danger for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. Fast forward, I guess, to about 2007. And I had moved from Pensacola to Jacksonville, North Carolina. And I was stationed on a base called New River. And at the time, the 2nd Marine Division General, if I remember right, was General Amos, Amos. And actually, I can't remember if he was the division general or if he was, regardless, they had people that were coming back from deployments, like I said, that were buying big bikes and getting hurt. So they contracted with Keith Code in the California Superbike School to provide rider training to Marines and sailors that were stationed in North Carolina.
Right.
And so they called it the AMOS course, the Advanced Motorcycle Operator School. And it was because it was named after the general who had kind of worked all this out. But the gist of it was Keith Code would pack up the school in the trucks, all the bikes, all the training gear, come out to North Carolina, and they would set up tracks on the airfield. Mm-hmm. And so you had the lean angle trainer, you had the brake trainer where you're trying to endo the bike. You had all of their California Superbike coaches that came out, and it was the way that California Superbike School is set up with the levels. It would take elements from the different levels and turn it into a package that you would get over a weekend, and it was free to the Marines. And so we're out there training with all these coaches, and the thought was, if you learn what your motorcycle can do and you get more comfortable operating it, then you'll be safer on the road. This was the general principle. And the Marine Corps started doing, they called them mandatory riding clubs, where every unit with motorcycle riders, at least once a month, would have to go out on an organized safety ride.
Right.
And so
I will say this. I've had other folks that's been in the military and have talked about that program. It sounds like you were there before they were. But yeah, which is a dope thing. So continue.
Yeah, no, it's one of my prized possessions. I don't, you won't be able to see it on the wall. You can see some of the pictures, but back there's a picture of Keith Code sitting on my Busa. Because when I took the Busa to the training and everybody looked at me like, "What are you doing with that thing?" You know, it's like, "Hey, I'm here to run it. Let's go." And it was great. Like I said, Keith Code sitting on the Busa, what a fantastic thing. Yeah. But when the unit started doing the mandatory safety rides, you had people coming out of the woodwork, because what they found out is a lot of people own motorcycles, but they were hiding them from the Marine Corps. Right. Whether it was because, they didn't want to wear the safety gear, or they didn't want to comply with the different Marine Corps training requirements. And so when they formalized these programs and they started providing those things, it really made it more attractive for people to be open and be safer in what they were doing. Yeah. The interesting thing is that, and this is a little bit of a downside in the context of what we're saying. So I was a major at the time. And so one of the things that was difficult is when I come up, because there weren't very many Hayabusas running around. And so I was pretty easy to spot out. And when you have all these young Marines that aren't really comfortable around officers, and here comes this major, on a thing, not that was a huge deal, but it made people uncomfortable until we would have conversations. And so one of the things that the motorcycle community made me do, I got in the habit of not identifying myself until well into conversations with people. Right. Because
I'm an outsider.
No, that's okay.
Let me ask, why?
Because of the separation that in the military with officers and enlisted people, there's different levels of responsibility, different levels of authority. And so you just typically don't have people that mix as a group in the way that you would think. And so for me, I wanted it to be, again, going back to the example thing, I wanted people to see what I was doing. I wanted people to see that you could do it safe and you could maintain your bike and you could still have fun, right? And one of the things that we did is we worked to make it so people didn't have to wear the reflective vest. Because people weren't wearing them anyway, and there were statistics that said that they didn't really impact accident rates. And we're like, well, if you're going to force people to wear something that they think is silly and it doesn't work anyway, then that's the kind of stuff that people are going to not do and, kind of hide from everybody. So it's a simple thing, but it's a big deal, especially to, a younger person that's wanting to look cool. And so like I said, instead of, telling people who I was, I would try to engage in conversation with them or go out on rides with them so that they could see that it's kind of that, I don't want to stay away from that person because of who they are. I'd rather have a conversation, get to know me a little bit. And then that way, what I'm wearing at work doesn't matter, right? Not when we're in this group. And so I saw the culture on active duty change a lot because of that. And it was a really neat thing to see.
And I got to say, that's a huge deal for the military or as a whole to recognize, like, it's better to allow it than to sit here and say, don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because just like a kid, the more you tell somebody not to do something, the more everybody wants to do it, right? Yeah. So it's just.
Sorry, and it's something I'm promoting it but it's something that should be in the description of the pamphlet. Like, if you want to ride motorcycles, this is the place.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that we used to laugh, because the Marine Corps at one point went through a phase where they were recruiting at the X Games.
Yeah.
And then they were getting upset because the people they were recruiting had extreme behavior.
Yeah.
Like, what did you think was going to be like? These are people that want to box, they want to wrestle, they're doing cliff diving and all. It's like, what did you think you were going to get? Like, you went after these people for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how what things turn into when stuff like that goes. But same thing with riding a motorcycle, right? When you twist the throttle and you feel like you're in tune with the bike and you're riding down the road and you've got the scenery going past, it's a beautiful feeling. And it's not the same feeling as in any car that I've ever driven with, not even in a convertible. No, right. And when
going off, I'll say this, and I don't, I'm an IT guy at the hardcore level, podcast guy at the leisure level. If I have a bad day and I jump on my bike, it's a beautiful day.
100%. It's when I don't do it so much anymore because the roads where I'm living now are absolutely atrocious. Mm-hmm. They don't have potholes; they have sinkholes. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
But when I first got here, my commute is about an hour each way. Mm-hmm. And I had people that were like, "Oh, I can't believe that you're tolerating this travel." And I was like, "It's an hour for me to ride into work and an hour for me to ride home. It's an incredible way to set my mindset on the way into work. Yeah. And it really helps me decompress on the way home. Like, it's a beautiful thing."
It is. And also, and I haven't really witnessed, I'm in Florida now, and I grew up in Boston and, riding in mostly Mass, but I've been outside of Mass. Just the smells that you experience in Massachusetts, in Massachusetts, I said New England, people who, burn firewood versus what other ways of heating the house or cooking or whatever. It's an experience that you can't have in a car.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because it really is one of those things where if you know, and if you don't, nobody can explain it to you. You just have to experience it. But I think that's also why when people ride a motorcycle, immediately they either love it or they hate it. And I haven't met too many people that hate it, but I know that it's out there. Yeah. And so it's such a freeing experience, and it just puts you so close to everything. And the way that a bike moves when you're riding is very different than the way a car handles. Yeah. Yeah. So it makes you feel more in tune with the road. You feel more a part of what's around you. So
right. Yeah, no, you're more in the moment. And not to say, I'm a car guy first. That's what I grew up on, four wheels. If I in a perfect world, I'll be Lewis Hamilton. But either way, it's really hard to explain it unless you do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And for me, like riding a motorcycle and being connected in the environment, it's one of those things like I didn't know it ahead of time, but after experiencing it and experiencing it up that way, it's something that I got to experience all the time. Yeah. And I find that there's some people that, and there's no other way to say it. Like, there's a few ways to say it, but at the end of the day, they get the ish scared out of them, and then they run away from it, and don't really get to appreciate what it does from a therapy perspective. Not even to go fast and go crazy, but just a normal riding experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that people have that experience through others as well. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody knows somebody that has a relative that was hurt in a motorcycle accident. Right. Everybody knows somebody that had a bad experience in some way. So you shouldn't do it because it's, and I think that, to your point, what people don't appreciate is when you're riding, the way that you focus on what you're doing and how you're controlling the motorcycle and where you're at around you is just a different calming force, if you will.
Right.
And certainly we've all had oh crap moments, right? Like everybody has found themselves in a position where they come up on something unexpected in the road, or somebody has crossed over the double yellow and you have to evade, and those kinds of things. But it's interesting to me that even after that happens, like I've been in situations where my adrenaline ramps up and then I can't get it to come back down. Like whether it's the fight or flight thing or whatever it is, and you can't get it to go away. And one of the things that I've noticed is that even when you have one of those experiences on a motorcycle, it goes away relatively quickly. You can get back to your calm on the bike just because you're back in the moment and you're back in control, and you've passed whatever that thing was that got into your bubble, if you will. So for me, motorcycles are incredibly calming.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think everybody's right. As we figured out early on the show. Let me ask this, because I know I don't have you forever. Like you're riding on the track. Not riding track. That's what we're gonna get to. But you're riding on the streets. You're riding here. You're riding in Japan, and you're in New England. At some point you decide you want to go to the track. So what was that like? And you've been riding at a very young age. So did you like follow AMA? You follow 500 G? It wasn't called GP, but whatever MotoGP was called before the MotoGP. I think it was 500 something. I can't remember. Did you follow that? Did you follow like World Superbike? Like did you follow racing at all? Did you do any racing prior? Like how from 18 to I guess 2007, 8, somewhere around there. Like how did you like say, hey, I'm going to the track?
So I took my Busa. I had friends that rode the track, and I had taken my Busa to, if I remember right, it was 2005. It was at Road Atlanta, and it was like the 50th anniversary of Suzuki or something. And I did one of the parade laps on my Busa on the track. And, at that time I was following guys like Matt Madden, the Ben Spies. I remember at that race, Roger was Nicky Hayden was at MotoGP, but Roger and Tommy were both riding for, I want to say it was Kawasaki at the time. And in that particular event, all three of the Haydens were there with their dad. So there were some AMA guys that I followed, but it wasn't really strictly following racing. I did get excited about the track, and I ended up taking my Busa to a couple track days and figured out very, very quickly that was not a good idea, right? Like to take it out and ride around is one thing, but if I'm actually trying to get what I want to get out of a track day, the Busa wasn't it. At least not for me. So I ended up picking up an SV 1000, and I
get a 1000.
Well, I mean, like I said, 600 to ZX11, it all fit the thing. So I got a set of leathers made, custom leathers, because I'm a big guy, and I got a set of custom leathers made by NGAK out of California. And I took that SV1000 to Barber for a weekend. And I had a couple of friends of mine that were instructing with STT or SGT at the time, or Sport Bike Track Time rather. And I was out with them, and as I recall, it was a 3-day weekend. So we had stuff Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Things are going great on Friday, great on Saturday, and it was in the last session that I had planned to ride on Sunday. I have got some beautiful pictures coming down Barber, the start-finish straight. I make the left in 1, and somewhere when I flipped over into 2, it was the ground sky. I don't know what's going on, and my bike is laying over there somewhere. And I thought that I had gotten right back up and was walking towards my bike to pick it up. Yeah. I found out from a corner worker that getting right back up is not what I did at all. And I probably wasn't even sure what motorcycle I was trying to pick up. So my wife, who I was dating at the time, I'm glad she saw me before she saw the bike. The bike was absolutely destroyed. Yeah. And I think it was a pretty spectacular crash. Because if I'm going to do it, I do it big. And but I was fine. And so, but what it did is it made me say, you know what, the track is not for me. I don't know what I did wrong, and I'm going to hurt myself. I'd rather just stick to the street where I don't have to worry about the dangers of the track. I'd rather focus on traffic trying to kill me and animals driving out in front of me. And
Really?
I didn't want anything to do with it.
Let me ask that, because that's interesting, because like, I've crashed on the street and crashed on the track, and like I haven't had that thought, but you like now, how did you come to that conclusion?
I guess I looked at it as not understanding what had happened, that I was probably predisposed for it to happen again. And I was lucky that nothing serious had happened. I think I had a concussion and I had some bruises and things like that. But I relatively speaking, nothing happened. And I walked away with the bike being mangled, but it wasn't me. Yeah. But the other side of that is that a friend of mine, one of the instructors from Sport Bike Track Time, was selling his bike that he had been instructing on. It was a GSX-R 1000. And so I bought it. Okay. And I said, just in case I ever want to go back to the track, I'll have a track bike.
Yeah.
Okay. So I moved to New England.
What year?
This was in 2019.
Okay.
I moved to New England, and that GSX-R 1000 is in the trailer. And it did not come out of a trailer until 2022.
Wow.
And what happened was...
Pandemic bike.
Yeah. And what happened was I was over at a friend's house who had been a part of that Hayabusa group and used to meet us at the Tail of the Dragon. It turned out he lives just a couple of miles from where I live in New Hampshire. And I was there, and he was having a barbecue, so there were a bunch of friends there. And I meet this big burly guy named Isaac Davis. He's number 958. And Isaac and I are going back and forth and, talking about the track, talking about things. And I made a comment. I said, I have a GSX-R 1000 track bike. And so he was like, oh, I got to come over and take it and see what it feels like on the track. And he was racing at the time. Right, he was a novice. Yeah. And so I started going to Loudon and watching him race. Okay. So I would sit up at the shelf and I would watch Isaac go around and cheer Isaac on. Yeah. And then another friend of ours who had also been in the Booster group said, hey, while you're up there watching the races, they need corner workers. And I was like, okay. So I was a corner marshal. Me and my wife were doing corner marshaling I only did it for a couple of rounds. Don did it more than I did, because at another barbecue, Isaac looked at me and he said, if you don't bring your fat ass to the track, and I apologize for saying it this way, but if you don't do it, I'm going to come steal that bike and I'm taking it. And so Don was like, all right, I'm getting you a track day. That's all we're doing. And I had no idea what the Penguin School was. I had never heard of it. I didn't know. And so my wife actually signed me up for the track experience with the Penguin School. And so I went, and the problem was, after all that time sitting in the trailer, that GSX-R 1000 wasn't ready. No, the tires were old. All the fluids needed to change, everything. But I had an R1 that I was riding on the street. Yeah. And so, okay, well, we're taping up the R1. That's what we're doing. Okay. And so I went and did the track experience. And I remember the first thing that hit me is it didn't occur to me who Eric Wood was.
Well, yeah.
So again, not having followed racing that far back, I didn't know. Yeah. And, we go through the riders meeting and he's Eric Wood and he does this and they mention Woodcraft, never put that together. Yeah. Yep. Same here. And so we're going through, and I had a great time. And I had such a good time that I had decided I wanted to do Super Street.
Okay. That's what's up. Yeah.
The problem is that when I had signed up for the track day, right, I didn't know how I was going to feel. And so I was like, I don't want to race on Saturday. If I feel okay, I'll race on Sunday. Yeah. Well, I didn't understand the process well enough to know that's not how it works, right? Mm-hmm. You sign up, you do the Saturday. So I didn't end up getting to do Super Street that weekend, but I did Super Street in September, which ended up being the last round. Yeah. And ended up, I pit now in the garage. It's me and Isaac Davis, and we're right next to Eric and where they keep the Penguin School bikes. Yeah. And one day it occurs to me, I have a Woodcraft stator cover on my Busa, on my 2001 Busa. And I was going, are you kidding me? This is the guy. Like, it's just really, it's crazy. And then you start learning about the history of penguin school and some of the riders that come out, and it's like, how did I just fall into this? Like, this is absolutely amazing.
No, it is. And, you know, I don't know how it's been since you've been racing at Loudon, but for me, racing at Loudon and coming to other locations and stuff like that, the history of Loudon, the Penguin School, and all that stuff. It's one of those things that, you know, should be made of a movie at some point.
Yeah,
Seriously,
I agree. It's funny to me, and I would venture to say that every club would say this.
Yes.
That, you know, there's no club like theirs, and there's no track like theirs, and the people and everything else. But I will say that when we have people come from other places, they say that about our group and about our track.
Right.
And Loudon, I think, is a great track. There's a lot of stuff to be mindful of, right? The tar snakes and the transitions, and a couple of the places where, you know, there's divots in the track.
Yeah. But I am cutting you off. But there's one thing that's factual I could say about Loudon. If you race at Loudon and you go anywhere else, you're fast. Places and you come to Loudon, you may or may not be fast depending on what your heart looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting when you see people come to Loudon the first time, and when they've been to other racetracks, the comparisons immediately start, right? The facilities and the safety features and stuff, and we're all looking around like going, "What? This is great! What are you talking about? This is where we live." And other people are like, "I can't believe you race here." But it's really interesting. And back then, like I said, with Isaac challenging me, and then being in the garage with him and meeting the people, just all the people throughout the paddock. It's just how do you not want to keep coming back? Right. That's the thing, is it's almost like the motorcycles pull you there, but the people keep you there.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a beautiful way to say that. It literally is that. It is like the people. And I think that's, you know, synonymous across the world, probably the country, and definitely the world, where, like, you know, it's like the motorcycle brings you to whatever your thing is, but then it's the people and the vibe of the people that keep you there. And I'll say that versus, you know, arguing with people about which track is better. It is like the motorcycles bring us here, but then the vibe of the people, it's such a, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's the best way to put it, you know, and without getting all sappy or without being long-winded, it is a beautiful thing to see. And I think everybody should own a motorcycle.
Nobody could argue with that. And it is something to get emotional about. It's one of those things where, you know, you said earlier, no matter who you are, no matter what you think about a person, when somebody on a motorcycle needs help, you help them, right? Yeah. And it's interesting to me that in the paddock, how everybody is doing everything they can, scrambling to help each other get out on the track. And when you're out on the track, you're competing. And then as soon as you're back off the track, you're on your cool down lap coming in, and everybody's high-fiving and slapping each other. It's the only time that is not, you know, that everybody is out there for you. And I have found myself, you know, I get somebody that pulls a pass on me, and I'm like, God, you know, that was a great pass, man. Good on you. And it's funny how easy it is to get excited for everybody around you and how well they're doing. And it's, like you said, it's people supporting people. The funny thing about what I've fallen into, and I really feel blessed that I've literally fallen into this stuff, is that when I first came to New England, and again, this was the 2019 timeframe, I had applied for a veteran program. It was called Vet to Track. And the program had two sides to it. One was they were working to put military veterans on the track to kind of experience what that was like. Mm-hmm. And the other side of it is that they would take veterans and they would park them with a Moto America team. Oh, and dope. So if when you got there, you know, depending on how you formed a relationship with the team, they would put you to work in different ways. And so, you know, some of it might be that you're helping move stuff around. Some of it might be that you're, you know, going and taking wheels to get tires changed. Some of it might be you're actually working on the bike with a rider. And I was fortunate to be paired with rider number 138 in the Twins Cup, Chris Spates. Mm. And so, you know, I this is my first time in a racing environment, you know, in the pit, if you will. And I was expecting that they were going to have me just kind of observing, and I expected to be pushed out the way. And even though it was a little bit awkward, after a while, Chris and I started talking, and we had some common connections, and so the relationship changed a little bit. And Chris was having some problems with his motorcycle, and so here I am in probably the worst possible scenario. There's somebody that Chris doesn't really know. He's having problems with the motorcycle. He's like, I'm ready to pack up and go home.
Yeah, let me tell you something, Sonny.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's what you're saying to him. Yeah. Let me tell you something. So
we start talking, and it's like, hey, why don't we try to fix it? And the funny thing is I hadn't met Eli and Eric Block. They were pitted right across the row from us.
Uh-huh.
And so we start tearing the bike down. We ended up having to change a head gasket. And so we're starting to tear the bike down. It's getting dark. Eric comes over. He's wanting to throw hot dogs at us, and he's being loud and obnoxious like Eric is. and we're working through the bike, and no kidding, we get the bike put back together, right? It's me, Chris, and a guy named Scott Rutt. And Scott was another person from the Vet to Track program. So we get the bike put back together, and he goes out and he races, and he comes back 15th. He's in the points in the race. So, in the space of a day, we went from he's packing up and leaving and to now and I had a piece of that, right? So the feeling I have of coming into this and actually being helpful and contributing. So race again the next day, actually finished a place better. But there were some technical issues, and in Parc Ferme, they disqualified the bike because they saw stuff floating in the water. And he was like, you know what? Well, the issue was we had used kind of some of the copper gasket, and so some of that had gotten in. You could tell what it was, but can't be anything but water, right?
Right.
And Chris he was like, I just appreciate that I was able to get out here and race, and you guys helped and whatever.
Yeah.
So Chris had me back a couple times after that. I was able to participate with Brian Van when he was working, not in the Talent Cup, in the, what did they call it before the Talent Cup?
I'm trying to think now.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a few years ago.
I don't know what it was before the Talent Cup.
But I got to work with him and with Brian and the people that were on his team. And so it was one of those things where down at Barber, I'm helping them lug toolboxes around and stuff. And it's just being a part of the racing environment. And what I found was exactly what the purpose behind that Vet to Track program was, which was in the military, I worked on helicopters as an example. So if an aircraft that I was working on couldn't launch, that meant that somebody couldn't get where they needed to go, or somebody couldn't get back, or they didn't have what they needed. So when I got out of the military and I didn't have that anymore, I missed that feeling of being so involved in a team that, like, if you didn't do your job, it didn't matter. And so now here I am back in an environment where if I'm not being helpful, if I'm not doing what needs to be done, the rider doesn't get to race. And so it put me back in that frame. So now coming back to Niemer, and I'm deciding to do Super Street, it's now I have all those feelings of being in the paddock and helping people change wheels and do. So the fact that I was able to kind of progress through that, and I've been really fortunate to be able to work with a couple of different teams in the Twins Cup and stuff like that, because at Niemer, all kinds of people are racing Moto America, and everybody always needs help, right?
Right. And so I am cutting you off, but like,
no, you're good.
Let's talk about the Super Street, because the Super Street is to my knowledge, it's not in any other club racing series. Let's talk about what that is like versus a full-blown club series. Like Loudon is the first place, Neymar is the first place to do that. Talk about like the Super Street versus racing where everyone else in the U.S. would know.
So one of the things that's interesting, and I don't mean for this to come across badly, but I think racing is different than doing a track day. I think you have a different mentality.
I agree. I 100% agree with that.
And so when you're going out and doing a track day and you get the idea of riding around the track and what you're doing, don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from that, but it's a different mindset. There's a couple of different skills that are involved. And so when I did Super Street the first time, I had done a couple track days, earlier on. I had done the track day with the Penguin School, and then I get out there for the mock race for Super Street, and we're looking at the start lights, and I've got people lined up next to me, And as soon as we let the clutch go, I'm like, whoa, what is happening? Like there's people all around me. This is okay. What's happening here? And especially on the first lap of the mock race, heading into turn one, the world looks very, very different as you're coming across. And so it was just one of those things where I was like, this is really cool. It's not just, you're riding around the track. It's like you are trying to be strategic. You're trying to be focused. And this whole time you are in the extreme newness of what you're doing. So nothing you're doing is right, but it's kind of that thing where you feel like you're leaning over next to scraping your elbow and, you've got a chicken strip on the side of your tire that's 4 inches wide because you're not doing what it feels like you're doing.
Right.
But I was hooked from the very first time. And I firmly believe that is their intention, right? Is to make it so accessible. And you're really running what you brung. You tape your bike up like you would for a track day and you're ready to go out.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be super low barrier with the idea that if you get out there and you experience it, you're going to want to keep doing it.
Yep.
And the funny thing is that I saw guys that in the range of my race, I saw guys that were out there on a bike, just like I was, that was taped up, that had, their license plate removed and they had DOTs on. And I saw other people that were like full blown armor bodies and slicks and everything else. And I'm like, I'm not sure exactly. But it did give me a picture that you can invest as much or as little as you want. If you're ready for a track day, you can do Super Street, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to go.
Right.
The problem is, and it's a really good problem, is that sooner or later when you're riding Super Street, like there were a bunch of new people all the time, and so you didn't really get used to riders and how they ride. It was always new people, and so I was seeing people that were progressing. And I said, well, I think I want to try that. I think I want to go ahead and do the race thing. Yep. And, not that was an excuse for me to spend a bunch of money or anything, but, I was able to go out and get a set of leathers, and I was able to go out and get a bike. And the funny thing is I was riding the R1 for Super Street, but it felt to me unmanageable, right? The throttle was really stiff response. And so it was kind of on and off. And there were places where I think I was afraid to really wind it out because I knew I would have to stop, and I wasn't. Right. I didn't have the skill for it. Right. And so I was looking around, and I had a Grom that I loved, and somebody forwarded me an advertisement for a track/race bike that was prepped on Facebook Marketplace, and reading down in it. It was, the guy was looking for, I can't remember if it was $4,000 or $5,000 for the bike and all the spares and everything, but would consider trading for a Grom. And so I sent the guy a message and I said, hey, I've got a Grom. And he said, well, send me pictures. And within 5 minutes, he's like, when can I come pick it up? Now, the person I'm talking about is a guy by the name of Michael Lee, and he's number 351 with me.
Yeah, I know Mike.
And so what I didn't know at the time, what I didn't have a complete picture is how well loved that bike was when I got it. But Mike is a fantastic person. I call him my spirit animal. But I got that bike. It's a GSXR 600, and I started putting the work into it. So I kept riding the R1 while I was trying to get the GSXR where I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And then made the jump into novice and started racing with people. And just had a fantastic time. Like once I got bit by the race bug, I'm like, I'm spending way too much money to be this bad, but I'm having a blast, and I'm going to keep doing it until I can't.
All right.
And it's just been fantastic.
Nice. And that's a good segue because, like you, I not like you. I'll say like me. I started out on the SV650, and in 2013. Yeah, like I did a couple of rounds. 2014 did a couple of rounds. 2015 I did the full round as a novice. And for those that don't, everybody who have never raced at Loudon don't know. I think, or maybe may have heard. But like other places, you're amateur or expert. But at Loudon, you start out as a novice, then you become an amateur, then you become an expert. It's a separate class for the newbies because the track is such a track that we have 3 classes as far as skilled riders. Yeah. And 2015, I was the top novice in 2015, but in 2016 I switched to a R6 inline four versus a twin, and it took me a long time to get fast.
Sure.
What I consider fast, because everybody's different, right? I'm not going to sit here and say what fast is, because we all just deem what we think is fast based on our own skill set. And it took me a while to finally be competitive. And I see you this year now. You're very competitive. You're doing some PBs. What was it like for you, coming in, seeing what, going from the streets and the street race. I don't know the exact classes, street. And then, coming into novice and deciding to get the jigsaw and stuff like that. What was it like for you deciding, because it's a choice to be like, okay, I want to go to the next level?
I think that what was interesting is two things happened, I think, at the same time. One is I saw people that I thought were good people that I was able to look up to because of their skill. And it's funny to me at the racetrack that you stop looking at people for whether they're a man or a woman, how old they are. You look at what you see them do on the track and go, okay, I want to get to know that person. I want to follow that person. Yep. And so it's interesting that my perception of that changed.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I started realizing where I had the experience before where I said, I'd rather do this on the street. I don't want to mess with all this danger on the track. That flipped. I'm racing and everybody is generally going the same direction. Everybody's wearing, safety gear. Everybody's bikes are in decent condition. And so this is a safer place for me. And so I don't think in the last 2 or 3 years, I've ridden a bike on the street probably 5 or 6 times.
Oh, wow. We're going to talk about that, but keep going.
Because for me, it's just more fun to be at the track, riding on the track, where I'm worried about the person that is in front of me and not hitting them and trying to figure out how to get around them. I'm not worried about everybody that's around me that isn't paying attention, that's trying to take me out, right? And so for me, I kind of fully absorbed the whole, I want to be at the track. That's where I want to do my riding. And it's not saying that I don't ever want to ride on the street, but my desire to do that is so much less. I just don't have the calling like I do for the track. But to see the way that the people think about racing and the way that people get excited about the events, it keeps going back to it's the people that keep you coming back, and you want to see people that you saw at the last round. And, you have whatever back and forth that you have with somebody on the track, and you want to get back to that, and you want to push each other to become better. And so for me, it's people really trying and really encouraging you to try to be better in whatever way. And there's so many different things that being faster might mean that you're twisting the throttle more. Being faster might mean that you're braking later. Being faster might mean that you're better roll corner speed, right? There are so many different aspects of it and so many things that you can want to improve and focus on, and so many people to help you, that you really can set your own goals and do it and just make sure that you're having fun while you're there. So it was a very easy thing for me to want to keep going and want to get deeper involved in it.
Nice, man. Let's talk about how you got quicker at the track, because for me, it took a little bit, like I was saying earlier, where I was on the R6. A couple of things for me. One, switching from the twin to a inline four, where my street bikes was also a twin. That was also an adjustment, which until I got my inline four, I didn't realize you had to adjust. I just assume you're in a car, V6, 4-cylinder, whatever, you just fast. It's not the same feeling when you're on a bike. So it took me a little while to get quicker. You're at Loudon, you're seeing, you're in the street class, and then you're moving to novice. What was it like for you to start figuring out how to go faster? You went from the 1,000, you got a 600. I assume there were some adjustments there. So what was it like for you to say okay, I like what I'm doing. I feel like I know what I'm doing and all this stuff. Now, how do I go quicker and start getting up front?
Yeah. You know how G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
Knowing doesn't seem to do anything for me. It's funny because my perception, I guess, of speed, and if having raced at Loudon, and anybody who has know, when you're going down the start finish straight, and you've got the wall right on the right side, and you're coming down it, and you're looking for the number boards. It's just, there's a lot of things that happen in a relatively short period of time, and there's a number of techniques that will slow things down and enable you to focus farther out. And I have mastered none of those. So it makes it difficult, trying to figure out. You always get antsy. And it doesn't help that I've had two pretty significant spills, both of which, one was in turn one was in turn two. And, broke my left collarbone both times. Wow. And so the difficulty is that going through and what I've seen, and I've noticed this with a lot of people, is that you get to a point of comfort and you're progressing. And I think that for many people, you get to this plateau where you're riding and you're stable at a pace and you want to go faster and you just can't. And then all of a sudden something happens and you'll drop 2 or 3 seconds. Like you figured something out and the clouds parted and suddenly you no kidding got in a lap. Like, where did that come from? Then you got to figure out how to replicate it. Right. Well, in both of my crashes, both of them happened late in the season. One happened in round 6 of one year, and then 2 years later, almost to the month, the second one happened. And so the problem is right at the season when I've made the most progress, I'm being more aggressive and I'm trying to be faster. And I just go past the whole ambition outweighing my talent thing. Right. And so the difficulty on that is coming back. And then the next round, trying to regain that confidence that you have, trying to regain all those things that you were doing that got you there. And the interesting part is, going back to why I'm more focused on the track and the streets, is that I'm fairly confident that if either of those 2 crashes that I had happened on the street with other cars around and all the things that are around roads and stuff, I don't think I'd be here talking to you. Wow. So to be able to experience those kinds of crashes. And almost every person that I know will get up from a crash and be like, how's the bike? When can I need to get back on? And the next race is in, and I was no different. And so it becomes really easy to be excited about that. But to your point, the getting comfortable was a really different thing coming off the R1. And the 2 biggest differences that I remember when I made that switch, the first round that I rode the 600 as opposed to the R1, is the sound of the bike, because it's a 2010 R1, so it's got the cross-plane engine.
Oh yeah,
and it just has a very distinctive sound.
Oh yeah.
And I got on the 600, and it didn't sound like that. No, and I was like, is this thing on? What's going on? Right?
Like, where's the bass?
and then the second piece is an extension of that, because you twist the throttle and the bike doesn't do the same things when you're doing it, right?
Which is interesting, because I go from a 650 to a R6. You go from 1,000 to Jigsaw 6, and I know that because my street bikes are 1,100 as far as the 98 Ducati 98, and then now the V4, and I've had 1,000 bikes. It's when you're on 1,000, you get comfortable with that speed. It's the 600 is like a tricycle. When it's like a 650 going up to a SV 650, 70, 60, 80 horsepower bike going up to an R6 or Jigsaw, it's faster speed. So it really is different of the eyes passing information to the brain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that is interesting is on the R1, like I remember very specifically the bike scaring me coming down the start finish straight, because I was like, hey, I've twisted the throttle and this thing's moving and I got to slow down. Yeah. And I remember the first time that I came through 3 going up 4, and when the bike kind of hit that transition and it slammed down, it just, because the throttle is so on off, it caused the bike to surge. And to me, it was just like, oh, I need to do something different. And the good thing was, is on the 600, I didn't feel those kinds of things, but I also had a better feel of what I wanted the bike to do and where I wanted it to do it on the racetrack, right? Because out there, when you're on the roads, a lot of people that are riding motorcycles don't know anything about setting their bike up. They don't know anything about how to make the bike feel and stay in touch with the road. And that's not a knock on them. Like there just aren't a lot of people making a big deal about that.
They don't tell you that at the dealership. They don't tell you about setup. They don't tell you about any sag, anything. They don't tell you anything other than sign here and have a good one.
Well, and the weird thing is, and I don't remember who told me this. They said this a long time ago, but basically the way they framed it is the best you rode is the best you know, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, when you're out there and when you put your hand on the throttle and you've really got to reach for the brake lever, or your clutch is super stiff because it's out of adjustment, or where your foot pegs are, and like you said, sag and whatever. Nobody's telling you about those.
My tire pressure was off on my first bike.
And so
my tire pressure.
But if that's what you learn, then that becomes the normal, right? Yeah. And so when you learn to ride that, it did take me a little bit of time to get past that, to understand that there are things that you can do to the bike to make it conform to how you want to ride it and to what the track is doing. You can use the bike to give you information about what's happening underneath you.
Yeah. And I'll say this, and as we continue, I think for some riders, the lack of this information takes them out of riding.
Oh, 100%. 100%. They can't get comfortable on the bike. They can't make it fit when it starts out bad and it starts getting worse because your forks and shocks need to be serviced. Or like you said, your tire pressure is low and the bike doesn't handle right. It's super easy for people to get discouraged when they don't understand. Something as simple as your bike's chain being too tight and you're going over speed bumps or you're going over potholes or something, your bike doesn't react the way that it should because it's restricting itself. Yeah. But you don't know that. You don't know enough. And that's one of those things where the really cool thing is when you bring people to the track, whether it's to watch the races or when you show them videos on YouTube, that people start seeing that there's a lot of things that you can do to a bike that don't have to do with, boring out your engine and buying brand new wheels and getting whatever the fanciest suspension is. There are things that you can do to your bike to improve the way the bike fits and feels underneath you. Mm-hmm. And it makes riding a more enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wish that knowledge was. You would think that dealerships would want to make sure that you know all that stuff because they'd sell more bikes to you.
Yeah,
right. You don't
get scared.
Yeah, it's just interesting, and it's funny. Even today, not today, but in current time, like there's a couple of people that were at the track for round 4 that were like, hey, I've been riding Super Street for the last 6 rounds, this year and last year, and I've never touched my forks. I don't know how to adjust them or whatever. Like, you're racing and you don't. Like, why don't you come see me? Let's figure this out, right? Like, it's one of those things where people genuinely don't know. And the really cool thing is that at the track there is somebody that is going to notice and they're going to pull you off to the side and they're going to say, hey, talk to me about this and let's see how we can pull you through it.
Right. And I'll say this, I'm one of those people when I first started, I knew nothing. My first year, 2012, I bought a Ducati 848, and 4 months later, I bought a SV 650 race bike that I've never raced before, and I was buying, race suits and race gloves and race stuff, and I had no idea. And went out on it, and my first session at a Penguins class, I'm sitting here like, what am I doing out here? How did I get here? So green as ever. I mean, by the end of the day, I was in love, but like and that's the thing, right? When I say about the experience, right? Like if I had a worse experience, I might have packed up and never came back to the track.
Sure.
What I'm saying? Because a lot of, and this is one of the reasons why this podcast is here is to talk to new riders because we don't know and we get out there. And I think for a lot of new riders, regardless of track or street, like if something scares the ish out of you, you're like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Bikes for sale, 200 miles on this bike. I've had it for 3 years. It's been sitting in the garage. Why? Yeah. I'm not just riding anymore. And because you got, for whatever reason, you didn't have a good experience on the bike. Mm-hmm. And now it's a fair thing. It's not a question of skill set. You haven't even figured out the skill set part of it. You're just scared because you had a bad experience. And there's a disconnect in the motorcycle community. I think it's a better connect today, but it's still a disconnect because a lot of people still jump on bikes and they don't have the experience. They don't have it's not like, I mean, I don't think you should ever jump in a Porsche for your first car, but it's good enough. It's like if you're on a fast car for your first car and you're learning how to drive, if you were a downhill skier as a kid or jet ski or something fast, you can adapt. If you were doing something very slow, very mundane, and all of a sudden you jump into something very fast where your eyes and your brain has to process things faster, you're going to have a tough time at it. And it's not a good or bad thing. It's just that you don't know and you haven't taken a time thing. And I think as human beings, in the moment, my first time playing baseball as a kid from Jamaica, I was catching the ball without the mitt, and I was a catcher, and I had the mitt in my left hand, but I was such a right-handed catcher. When you don't know, you don't do the right things. That's what I've learned. And if nobody's there to correct you, you fall out of love with something that it has nothing to do with your skill set. It's just because you don't know. And I think there's a lot of people that jump into motorcycle, and like myself, I didn't know in the beginning. I was fortunate enough that there were people who did know and saw me ride and decided to take me under their wing and point me in the right direction. And that's how I ended up at Loudon. That's how I ended up racing. And that's how I ended up in this community. And I think if I didn't have that and was with other people, it could have been a different experience. And that's the big part to me about riding. And, I wish I could talk to you forever because we're an hour and 16 minutes in this thing. But let's talk about how you got fast, because now you're fast. I see your times. I see you posting your PBs and stuff like that. What was it? What was when, how, and how does that feel? What was the struggle like when you were struggling? Because I was struggling. I know what that's like, and it's different for me. Maybe it's the same. We'll find out. What was that like? And then getting fast. And then let's talk about the motor clinic and how you decided to get into let me give back, because you are giving back.
So there are a lot of people. Eric would be one of the first. Eric Wood, and other people that would be very quick to tell me I'm not fast and I need to fix that. And I do think that there is a subjectiveness to it because I'm feeling more comfortable than ever. I'm taking advantage of some things that I think I want to do in the way that I take certain corners or the way that I use my braking markers. And I think some of it is just, to your point, there are techniques and skills that you can learn to do those things that unless you go through some kind of a training environment. I mean, there are people that are naturally fast.
Mm-hmm. I know a couple of them.
But if they don't know why, when they come to an unfamiliar situation, they don't necessarily know what they should be doing.
Right.
And it's almost like a person that shoots. If you've never been through any kind of training in for firearms and shooting, it may be that you have some natural talent, but you don't know if or how or when you're developing bad habits.
Right. Yeah.
And so
you can make the bullet hit the target, but why?
Yeah, that's right. And so what happens when you're in a different situation or there's something going on where you pick up a different handgun? And we see the same things when we ride a different motorcycle. But there are some skills that it doesn't matter what bike it is, that stuff carries forward. And so those are the kind of things that I think going to places like a club's track school or going and doing track days where you don't have the pressure of racing and everybody being competitive to learn in that environment and try to develop those skills. And one of the things that I really like, I've done track days with a couple of different organizations and everybody has, some similar models, but the coaches, and this is probably because I race with a lot of the coaches, I'm there with them every round. The coaches spend a lot of time trying to make you better, trying to be constructive, trying to explain to you some things that you don't realize that you're doing. And all the different tracks in New England, we're blessed. I mean, we have Palmer, we have Thompson, we have New York Safety Track, we have we have Loudon, obviously, but we have like 5 or 6 tracks that were within about a 5-hour radius. So you can ride in a number of different environments and a number of different track setups. And then you have a lot of these same people that are going around that you can learn from. So to be honest with you, the only way that I have gotten more comfortable on the track and improved anything that I'm doing is because I have so many good examples to emulate. I have so many people that are willing to share their skills and knowledge. And then I'm given the opportunity to try to develop that on my own without people making me feel silly or stupid. You know, they're again, everybody is sort of a mini cheerleading squad for everybody else.
Yeah.
Trying to make it. It doesn't matter if they know you're not. You know, you're sitting there on the cold pit waiting to go out, and everybody's, you know, high-fiving each other and everybody's fist bumping because everybody's just excited to be there and see how you're doing. And so for me, that all ties together. The thing about club racing is, again, at least from my perspective, I've never seen people walking around the paddock angry and like mad dogging other racers. And I've seen that in the paddock at MotoGP, and I've seen that in the paddock, you know, for Moto A. And but we're not racing. Well, some of us are racing for money, but for the most part, like we're racing amongst our friends, and we treat it that way.
Right.
And so it's the environment that helps you become comfortable, and more power to the number of people that we have on the track. Like it's amazing to me how many people make the leap from the Penguin School and racing at Loudon into Moto A. And so, of course, you have so many people to look at to emulate, right? Hey, that guy's obviously fast. I want to do what he's doing. I want to talk to him and understand how he's doing.
Right.
And
so but how does that feel for you, seeing it? Because you know it's like not to be, and now you see yourself.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I had somebody come up to me and tell me that they really liked what my bike looked like.
Uh-huh.
And for me, that was just a really weird moment, because I remember being at professional races going, man, those bikes look so cool. And for somebody to come up and say, man, I really like what your bike looks like, it makes you realize what you're doing. Because sometimes I think that we take for granted what it is.
Yeah. No,
it is such a welcoming community, and it is such there. Like I've had people that I work with that have come to see me race, and every one of them has been like, yeah, we had no idea that's what you were doing. That doesn't seem like a good idea at all. And it's just kind of funny, the reaction that they have. And so I think that there is a certain perspective in that, the newness of it, that it doesn't go away, but maybe we don't look at it the same way. No, and realize what it is when somebody who's not around it all the time is like, oh, that's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Yeah. So it's very cool.
I agree, but you still haven't answered it. How does it feel? Because like for me, and I'll say this, like when I took for my R6, I was in last place for years. John Butler would tell you he gave me the Walking Cane Award, and I got a free premium class down in Homestead because I was in the back of the pack. And you know, it's like I knew I was faster, but I couldn't figure it out. I didn't have enough experience. You know, the bike, me. You know, it was a whole bunch of things. But like, I remember when I was like, can I do that? And I remember it was less like, okay, they're 7 seconds in front of me. I can probably catch them. And I remember half of the season, like, oh, they're only 4 seconds in front of me now, you know. And by the end of the season, I'm like fighting for them for the championship. And so it's slow when you're in it, for sure. And I don't want. I mean, maybe if you're Muhammad Ali or one of these people who are braggadocious on your skill set. But like at some point, I mean, and maybe you haven't. I don't know. You tell me. But like, you know, now you're in the teens. You're in the, you know, you're 18s. I believe you're in even 17s. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, I'm not anywhere near that fast.
You're in the 18s, right?
I know the fastest that I've done, and I know I've got some good friends that are down in there. The fastest I've done is a 25.
Okay. That's still pretty good.
That's not super fast, but for me, for a person that never intended to get into racing, and then found myself, it's a blast, and it's to go back. Where I get excited is there's a rider, Randy Morissette. And
I know Randy.
Randy was riding Super Street, and you know, we had talked a couple times. He and we did the Penguin School. We didn't do the same one. I think I did the one after him, and so he started racing Super Street before I did. But I told him, I was like, Randy, you're riding Super Street, but the problem is you're not really racing anybody anymore. Like, you're so far advanced from the people that are normally coming to Super Street.
Yeah.
You need to really be racing. And so Randy posted a 17 in the last round. In fact, I think he ran multiple 17s, and he's right on the cusp of making that leap to expert, right?
Right.
And so there's some things that I've helped Randy out with. And so I'm not going to say it feels like I'm running that too fast, but I'm proud as hell that he is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so for me, to go back to answer your question about what it feels to get faster for me, it feels good. It feels good when I look at a board and say, I think I can hold the throttle to the 3.5 board.
Yeah.
I think that I can let go of the brake a little earlier and get on the throttle earlier coming out of 1.
Yeah.
I think that I can brake later going into 3. And so each of those things feels that much faster. And every one of those feels good. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you have a person that you start going back and forth with, like you said, it used to be that person was, half a lap ahead of me. And over the course of the season, you're starting to reel them in. And then next thing you know, the second to the last round, you guys are passing each other back and forth. To me, that progression feels amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you feel your skill improving. You feel your confidence improving. And it makes you want to, maybe I'll try to brake a little later next time.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to get on the gas a little earlier. And then you tend to do that until you realize, nope, too far. I don't want to be in the mole trap anymore. Time for me to not quite brake that late. So,
but seeing is believing, and it's such a weird thing. I think for people who have been accessing that part of their brain, they may take it for granted. But when you're a newbie of accessing that, like seeing is believing, and it's like you see it, you question it, you try it, you see yourself making steps, and all of a sudden, like, it sounds so simple, but in the moment it's not. Because trust me, like you, I'm sure, the ride homes, you're debriefing to yourself, you're talking yourself on the ledge, off the ledge,
right.
All that stuff, what I'm saying, and hopefully finding peace with it. But at the beginning of the season, you don't know what mid-season look like. You don't know what the end of the season look like. So it's all a hypothetical. All you have is an idea.
That's right.
And as a human being, to be able to have that idea and to see you progress, and for me, I always beat myself up in the beginning. Then all of a sudden I see the things I did well. And all of a sudden, it's not a bad weekend as I thought. It's just more like, okay, don't make this mistake. Do these things, because, in the beginning for me, like, I didn't check tire warmers often. I didn't check tire pressure often, and then I'll be in the race, and those things would be in my head, right? Yeah. And so, if things are in your head, you're not going fast.
Yes.
And I had to learn how to deal with these things so I can have less thought while I'm racing. And the less thoughts you have, the faster you go. It sounds simple, but it's harder to do in real time. So, for me in real time I would have never, if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't understand it. I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you about it. And I had to go through it. So it's like to see it and then go through it and have that experience where, like, man, I can compete at a level. And the racing thing, it's like you only go faster the more you're on the bike.
Yes.
There's no way around it. You can't pretend it. You can't, it's like if you're on a bike every day, you're going to be faster than somebody on a bike every other day, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So to see it and to do it, and, for us, and I'll lump myself as far as that, like, as far as like being elder statesmen in it, because we're not young. I didn't start racing as a young kid. It was older. So to go through that process and see it now, I see it, and it's just like, okay, I can do that. I can be quicker. I recognize what it takes to be quicker and stuff like that. So as you're sitting here telling me about your times and stuff like that, I'm sure you're also seeing, like, okay, I can find, and you talked about a little bit, you're like, I can find areas where I can be faster and quicker and stuff like that. And so, we're in 2026 and you've been doing it for a little bit. So, like, is it something where you're like, I just need more seat time at this point? Or is it something where you like, okay, well, mentally I got to do a couple more things?
So I think for me, and I've talked to a couple of different people about this, it's more mental. And like I said, it's the difficulty for me has been the apprehension coming into a season, having been through a crash, and then I don't know if everybody feels it, but when I'm coming up to turn 1 and turn 2, I always feel a little twitch in my shoulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just remember, dummy. And
turn three for me. I crashed twice there.
So it's one of those things where it just keeps you, it keeps your mind in it. And to your point, unfortunately, once you climb into your head, it's really hard to get out, right? And if you've got something in there, you're not focusing on what you need to do. You're not focusing on how you need to react to things and how you need to let the bike move underneath you, right? You tend to grab a hold of things and you're wanting to control it because you're wanting to make things happen. And that's the worst thing you can do, because you start slowing yourself down, you're fighting yourself.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I've noticed after the 2 crashes is that each time it has taken me a while to get out of that mindset where I can be more comfortable in allowing things to move. And so what's happened after the crash is that I've slowed down dramatically. And then after a couple of rounds, getting back on the track, being comfortable, then I'll see some big chunk of time drop off. And I'm, oh yeah, now I remember what this is like. Now I can do this. Yeah. And so there's that apprehension that you have to work through, and it's purely a mental exercise. And so I think that there are ways on the track where the thing I need to improve is not the motorcycle, it's my mental toughness and my attitude towards it to get back in that mindset. And like you said, the only thing that fixes that is seat time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many people try to do so many different track days with different organizations and at different tracks, is to keep themselves in that mindset where you're still riding. Even though it's a different mentality, it's still that you're going through all those motions, you're keeping that comfort level up. And there are, when you're out on the track days, you get in with a good group of people, you can still play around a bit, right? It's not the same, but you can still do it. So for me, there's no question about what the motorcycle can do. There's no question about what can be done on the motorcycle. It's just me making sure that I'm in the right mind frame to be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And it starts like on Wednesday night. That's a show. That's a different show. But I don't prepare for a weekend. But it's like Wednesday, Tuesday night, you start prepping for the weekend.
Yeah, 100%.
But let me ask this before we get out of here.
Sure.
You have Moto. Let me get it.
Moto Minute Clinic.
Moto Minute Clinic. I don't have my glasses on. Sorry. Moto Minute Clinic. It's one thing to be on a race bike. It's one thing to help our friends and so forth. It's another thing to start a business. I guess I'm in the same boat. If you'd have asked me back in 2016, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, you wouldn't say I would have started a podcast about motorcycle racing. So what make you decide to get into the business of fixing bikes? I think it's a good thing. As someone who is not in the business of fixing bikes and need a bike fixed, I don't think that I think we need a lot more mechanics. I think we need a lot more people in that front. I think we need a lot more good people in that front, because I think a lot of us also, you talk about, I spoke about, not having the experience of being a new rider to know what to expect, and having a bad experience to get me out of it. I think having a bad experience at a motorcycle dealership or a motorcycle garage, or however you want to phrase it, is also another reason to get out of that, because one or two bad experience is enough, and there's not enough good people in the industry. So what made you decide to say, hey, I love racing. I've been doing it since I was 18, riding since I was 18, track days and racing and all that stuff. Now this is another layer to it. I'm also going to try to help you get your bike in the right order.
So the way I started was much more selfish than you're making it sound.
Pay me.
I worked on helicopters my entire career in the Marine Corps, right? And so I had a little bit of mechanical proficiency. I'm a licensed FAA airframes and power plants mechanic. Mm-hmm. So, I could be working on airplanes and doing those kinds of things. And I just made different choices. But the thing is I looked around and I realized that it's too expensive to have people work on my bike when I've got a decent set of tools and I've got a little bit of mechanical aptitude. Mm-hmm. So I started working on bikes because it was a way to save money. Okay. And the other thing was I saw the way that some shops were working on bikes, And I just didn't have a lot of confidence in the work that was being put out. They didn't treat bikes like they were theirs, and that's not really a reasonable expectation, but they just didn't take the same care. And so I wanted to start working on my own stuff. And going back to when we used to go up to the Tail of the Dragon, you would always have people that showed up needing an oil change or needing a tire change or needing something else. And if you've never been to the Tail of the Dragon, if you've heard of it, 318 curves and 11 miles, all that. Well, the problem is that there's a motorcycle shop in the Robbinsville end of the Dragon, and there's a motorcycle shop in Maryville. So you're 20-something miles away from the Dragon either direction before you've got somebody that can work on a bike.
Right.
So the idea for Moto Minute Clinic started about at the Dragon being able to do some minor things for people that would have problems on the Dragon. Somebody crashed, or somebody needed to, get their brakes flushed or get pads changed, or just really simple stuff. So the idea behind the Moto Minute Clinic was doing some kind of quick servicing for people.
Yeah.
And in the Busa group that we were there with, I remember once, and a gentleman by the name of Omar Vega is a guy that I kind of birthed this idea with. On the Busas, we were doing throttle body syncs. And between the preparation and doing the actual throttle body sync, I want to say that the dealer charges were like $400.
Right.
And remember, I told you, we would go up there and have 50, 60, 80 Busas there. And so we would put out a call before we went and made a trip and said, hey, we're going to be available. We'll do these things. And I remember one night we did 30 or 40 Busas. We just had them lined up like an assembly line. And we had a couple people that were prepping the bikes, and then we would sync the throttle bodies and other people put it together. And it's all these people that were, whether they didn't have the money to do it or didn't have the skill to do it, we were doing something for them that they wouldn't have done themselves. And it wouldn't cost them an arm and a leg to do it. So fast forward to coming up here, the one of the things that I always laughed about is you had all these guys talking about what they wanted to do to their engine, and they wanted to put exhaust on, and they wanted to do all this cool stuff. But most people were having difficulty with making their bike move through a corner. And so I had an opportunity when I was overseas to go to the motorcycle suspension school in the UK.
Okay.
And what it was it was a school where you did hands-on training to do servicing and refurbishment of forks. You did servicing and refurbishment of shock, and you did some bike setup. And at the time, one of the things that's difficult about suspension work is it's kind of hard to break into it. Right? Because they not that anybody's trying to keep the knowledge away, but it's a difficult thing to learn. Not a lot of people take the time, and the tools and everything are expensive. Right. And so when
I'll add this. I feel like it's and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know what your experience is like, but I feel like it's it's very, not, I don't want to say cutthroat, but it's like it's seasonal. Right. And I think a lot of, I think some business owners get locked into how much money they need to make to survive the winter, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's interesting because I work a full-time job, right? And I've had people that said, hey, why don't you open up a motorcycle shop and do that for a living? And to be honest with you, the reason I don't want to make my living doing this is because I don't want to turn it into something that I don't enjoy. Right. And if I'm relying on it, exactly to your point, I feel like the pressure to do work, the pressure to do as much work as I can, the pressure to, maximize the money I'm making. Right now, what I focus on today, I don't advertise, right? Mm-hmm. I see people at the track, I wear my stuff, and the bike has my, actually there's several bikes that have my logo on them, which is actually really cool to see.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I will try to offer help if somebody needs it. If I see them or if they're asking around, I will help them. I'm not trying to take any business away from anybody. I'm just trying to be there to help when somebody doesn't have an option. So in my house, through Facebook, somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, I need a tire change. Not even to do with the racetrack. This is just a street rider like, hey, I heard you have a tire machine. Yeah. 11 o'clock at night. Man, if you can be here in the next hour, we'll get it changed for you.
No kidding, dude.
Yeah,
midnight.
Because if I'm up and I'm not doing anything, and it's the difference between somebody out there riding on some garbage tire or me getting them squared away. I don't do it all the time, but hey, if they reach out and
Yeah, no, that's dope. No, honestly, that's dope, and you're right because I've had other shows where we talked about like I was looking at a clip the other day where I was talking about something. Hearing people say it's just like you knew something was wrong with your bike for 2 months and you still rode your bike as often as you could. Like that make no sense to me because as soon as something's wrong with my bike, I'm getting it fixed.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting. Like I said, the mentality that some people have. I don't have the time to get my bike fixed, or it costs too much to get the bike fixed, or something else. And so that's where I'll have somebody call me and they'll be like, "Hey, I need the wheel bearings changed in my front and rear wheel." And I'm like, "Hey, bring them over. I'll show you how to take the wheels off the bike. We'll do the bearings together, and you can either have me do it in the future, or at least you've learned something about it." So for those kind of things, and it's the same way at the track, whether I'm helping somebody try to prep their bike for the track, or I'm helping somebody because they're having problems at the track, I normally take all my tools. Everybody laughs because in the garage I have Mr. Box, and it's a bunch of the Milwaukee, pack outs that are stacked on top of each other.
Facts.
And there's a lot of stuff I bring to the track in case somebody else needs it, right? And so the point is, if it's stuff that I have and there's something that I can do, like I don't want to be a jackwagon and not offer that up to help them, right? Like if they need it. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. So for me, I mean, there's times where somebody's like, "Listen, I just want to bring my bike to you and drop it off and have you do stuff." "Oh, okay, well then let's work out how much that's going to cost and parts and those kind of things. But I have as much fun having somebody come over and tearing their bike apart and doing, some kind of basic service, an oil change or a coolant flush, or, even changing fork seals or something. And I've got a person sitting in the garage and we're just, shooting just talking and the whole thing. To me, there's a lot of fun in that.
Right.
And so
go ahead.
No,
to say because like I hear you, and I do IT pays the bills, but don't bring your computers over. Don't bring your network appliances over.
Well, it's my wife laughs. I've got a pretty decent setup in my garage, and I've got a refrigerator down here. I've got the monitors, and usually like the one I'm on now is what I look at, like the spec cards and the manuals and all that. But the other one I've usually got YouTube on. And my wife said, "I'm not ever allowed to put a bathroom down here because I'll never go back up in the house." But it's one of those things where I enjoy working with the machines and I enjoy working with people.
Yeah.
And so for me, there's a lot of things that I learn in that process. And I think tools are tool, and I like reasons to buy new ones, right? So when somebody needs something done, I'm like, "Oh, I'll go get this tool and I'll work through it." And so it's not, like I said, it's not something where I'm wanting to compete with any business. I don't want to take any business away from anybody, but I'm there in the background for when somebody says, "I'm not sure how to do that. I'm not sure how to approach that." Or I may not have the money to go drop my bike off at a shop and have them do a bunch of stuff. Right. And so for me, it's almost like when you have everybody around a campfire, or have everybody doing a barbecue out in the backyard. It's just we're in the garage, and we're talking and laughing and getting to know each other while we're working on bikes. And so like I'm making bikes better, I'm making bikes safer, I'm getting to know people, I'm making friends. Like there's no downside to that. Right. I get money for stuff, and typically I tell people I got a tip jar over there, and whatever you put in it, I'm going to put right back into the garage and buy tools or stuff. But for me, the point of this is exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a passion project where I get to do things that I enjoy, and I get to meet and get to know people. And to me, that's the best thing ever.
Yeah, and I agree. It is one of the best things ever in the motorcycle community. There's so much more I could go on and ask about, and so many more questions, and we might have to do like a part 2 or maybe a part 12, because it's been very interesting. Because it sounds like it's just really about the passion. And as I'm listening to you talk, it's like it's really just like the passion of motorcycling, because I've used this analogy in the past. I don't think we find this anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think so. And which is pretty cool. And as I hear you talk about it, and it's just kind of like, look, man, you got a bike, I'm going to help you. If it's 12 o'clock at night, I'm going to help you, and I can help you go. And you don't find that in a lot of other places. And I'm not trying to put your third eye on trial here. But I feel like for me, motorcycling has made me a better person. You know what I'm saying? It's made me like, I'm going to pull over and try to help someone. If you're in a car, I'm not going to help you. But if you're on a bike, I'm going to pull over. You know what I'm saying? But it's made me a better person. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, as I'm hearing you talk, it's like, but you've been riding for so long. And I find it also interesting because I started, like I said, I started riding later. And there's a lot of people who started riding at your age. And 5 years or less, 10 years or less, they're anti-motorcycle. Nobody's riding motorcycles in their family, that kind of thing. So, to be able to be in it so long, find a love, or have the love for it, I should say, sustain it, and now giving back in a way where you're coming out at midnight. That's like, did you see yourself that way at 18? Like, are you shocked at where you are? Like, how do you look at do you even notice?
I do notice. And it's interesting because your point about being a better person, I do believe it's a part of that. I believe that being in a community where you see people helping others, I think you have two choices. You can either stay as an island on your own, or you can join in and do that same kind of thing where you're helping others. And again, I think that if you call it bad apples in the community, weed themselves out pretty quickly. Right. And so when I look at the people around me that I think are good people, and I think there's a lot of truth behind the do unto others idea, right? For me, there's a point where there are times where people need help and they don't want to or don't know how to ask. And so, I don't look at it as some people are offended by charity and I don't want to just take something for nothing. But the reality is I get something out of helping. I get something out of knowing that, hey, you'd be riding around on garbage if I wasn't helping you out, or, you wouldn't be able to get that done. And how would I feel if something bad happened because you didn't? So I get pleasure. I get fulfillment. I get joy out of being able to help people in small ways. And I'm confident that because of the community that we're in, if I was in a situation, and I know this, where when I've needed help, people have been there for me.
Yeah, likewise.
Didn't make me feel lesser because I needed help, whether I was asking for it or not.
Yeah.
And so not only has it made me a better person, but it makes me want to continue to be a better person. And so for me, that's where I go back to the overall picture. There's just no downside to it. And I know that there's other people that have passion about other things, other sports, other activities. This happens to be the one that I choose, and because of that, I think it's the best out there, right? So that's, I guess, arguable with other people. But for me, like, I legitimately don't know if something happened tonight and I couldn't have anything to do with motorcycles from tomorrow on. Like, I can't even imagine what that looks like. I can't. It's not, I can imagine what it looks like to stop drinking sodas or to stop eating ham sandwiches or, I can see those things. I can't see not being involved in motorcycles in some way. Yeah. So to me, that's what tells me, like, there's a couple of things I can't live without. I can't live without knowing that my kids are okay. I can't live without my wife knowing that I love her, and I can't live without being a part of the motorcycle community. Like, those are my kind of guideposts, if you will.
Nice, man. Listen, man, I think, I think this might be the longest interview I've done. I'm going to say that.
I apologize. I'm long-winded.
No, don't apologize. I've enjoyed every second of it, man. This is beautiful. And more than I thought, and I'll say this, somebody mentioned this, I don't know, it might have been 6 months ago, and I never thought about it, but like, what I get, I never thought I would learn what I'm learning from folks when I talk to them, and
Mhm.
it's not. I wasn't thinking about it. I was not thinking about it. It was just like it was not in my thought at all. And to hear your story and hear everything we've talked about, and I think we could probably talk for another 4 or 5 hours
Sure.
just talking about motorcycling and the love of it, and I appreciate it as much as you've taken the time out to do it as well. And so I do appreciate that, and I'm going to stop it here because I think it's a good place to stop, and we can't go on forever.
Well, before you stop, can I ask you for two things real quick?
Sure.
I want to, and it's okay if you say no. I want to give a shout out to the people that helped me race on my team.
Yeah,
but I'd also
definitely.
like to give a quick shout out to my sponsors, if that's okay.
You can do both, and I was going to give you that anyway. So definitely, shout out to tell everybody how they can find you. Tell all the people that supporting you. Or definitely lay it all out for us, please.
So I appreciate that. My team, which is the only reason I'm able to do what I'm doing, is my wife Dawn, my racing partner Isaac Davis, Mike Lee, my spirit animal, and a gentleman by the name of Dan Marsh, who is in the garage as a passion project himself, helping me with the mechanics. And then from a little bit farther away, Omar Vega, who lives in Virginia, but has come up here to do track days with us at Loudon. Nice. My sponsors make things easier because they make things available to me, and it's stuff I was going to buy anyway. And so it's easy to support them because there's stuff I already believed in. So, got to throw out Woodcraft because right off the top, racing stuff for racers made by racers, right? Everybody knows that when I got to change something quick, Woodcraft is the way to go.
Yes.
I've got engine ice that keeps the engine cool. I've got blood lubricants that keeps me spinning. Vortex EK with the chains, right? I've got the stomp grip that keeps me stuck to the tank. REB Graphics makes me look like a player, right? You can't even say anything bad about anything that Reese does with a motorcycle.
That's the only guy that does the graphics.
Yeah, Adarce Productions does some fantastic stuff with some of the pictures and video that they take. If you look at Spy Plus, they protect my eyes with the glasses. Envy Racing Apparel. I've had a couple of different sets of leathers, and the leathers are kind of all coming from the same place, but the design and the support and everything I get from Darwin, absolutely fantastic. When I look at Motion Pro, they provide a lot of the tools that I work on bikes with. It's just a partnership that I have with them. And again, when I look at what those sponsors do for me, they're trying to expand the community. They're trying to make it easier for us to do what we love. And yeah, they get something out of the backside, but if we're all coming out of it better, then there's nothing wrong with that. So for me, it's huge. Superbike Supply is a big player with us. And then Memer, hands down, gives me a place to ride, to race. The corner marshals that work there, we couldn't do it without them. Like, this is literally a community that I'm super excited to be a part of.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise, and coming out of DMR, coming out of LRRS, and going to other facilities, and I know every region of this country, probably the world, are gonna say their track organization, their race organizations are the best. But I'll say this: I find that if you can race at Loudon, you can race anywhere in the world. The great Nicky Hayden said it. And it was one of the toughest places to race at. And if you're a club racer and you race at Loudon, you can race anywhere else in the world. I don't know about that if you're anywhere else in the world. And I've talked to enough people about that. So, Loudon's very close to me, and it does, it's such a beautiful community. Overall, it's such a beautiful community. So I appreciate you coming on tonight, man, and talking it up. I hear the passion in your voice. I appreciate you with the motorcycle clinic, Motor Minute Clinic. Because it's cool. Like that. That's still one of the hardest things. I wrench a little bit. I can probably wrench more than I want to. I drink cappuccinos. So let's leave it at that. I don't want to do too much wrenching. But I appreciate people who can do a really good job and keep our bikes safe, and that's a very important part of the community. And like I said earlier, it's for people getting into the community. Finding a good place to go race, a good community to go race with, a good mechanics to help service your bikes and just keep you educated. is huge, and we need more of what you're doing because there's not enough. There's not enough motorcycle mechanics. You know what I'm saying? There's just not that I can tell, and I've been looking. And you can have, I don't have all the money in the world or close to it, and I've never been turned down for money. It's just been people are too busy, you know, and you know, when you're too busy, that means you need help. And so the fact that you're taking your time out and doing that, that's a big help to the community, man. I really appreciate it. And again, like I said, I want to thank you for coming on. My name is Rex 45. It's the Be Forever Cool podcast. I want to thank Shawn Hughes for coming on from Motor Minute Clinics, Rider 465. I'll see you up in Loudon, definitely. And I'm pretty sure we'll be back on the show together. Peace.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me anytime.